Hello, I am Dolmo, and I am going to do a developer commentary of my level, which is called Metaphor. Metaphor was made for Fusionville 2, which was a mapping competition hosted by RunThinkShootLive.com and Map Labs in August of 2020, and it was released, I believe, in September the following month. So I'm going to do a developer commentary and speak about some of the gameplay elements and some of the visual elements that I implemented into this map to make it a solid Half-Life 2 level with good design. And also I'll speak about some of the mistakes I made and some of the things I would do differently. So the aim of Fusionville was to create a map based on a number of themes. I can't remember what they all were, but there was a number of reoccurring themes from old Ville competitions and some from the newer Map Labs competitions. I chose Verticalville, Liberationville and Bridgeville as my three fusion elements. So one thing I've learned over the years that I've been making levels and maps is that trying to cram a proper story into a competition map's really difficult. So for this I decided, instead of going with a full story, just to go with a general premise, with no kind of story elements. So immediately I show the player the aim of the level. So that sets the player up, the premise for the player to go and rescue these citizens who are in a cage. And, maybe the Combine put them there, maybe it was someone else, we don't know it. And it's not important at all, and it will never be important. It's just something for the player to do, and it played in very well with my, the Ville, Liberationville, the one that I picked for the challenge for Fusionville. So, it's a good premise, and I quite like the idea of having them just suspended in a warehouse, which this idea was copied from my the level that I made for Black Mesa Stalwart XT, which was released in 2019. I made that with Jamaican Dave, and this is exactly the same premise. Instead, it's just done in Half-Life 2. But I quite like the way it was done, and I wanted to do it slightly differently. So this is kind of the spiritual successor to that. So just a bit on the setting before we get into the gameplay. I set it in a warehouse because they're easy to do. There's so many props and textures of warehouses. I actually based it off the one in the City 17 levels, the war levels in Half-Life 2, where there's like a funny elevator, and it's my favourite part of Half-Life 2 just because of how strange it is. So I based it off that. And originally this map was set during the day, but I kind of wanted to make it a bit more visually interesting and a bit more ominous, so it's actually set at night, although some of these windows you used to be able to see outside, and I had like buildings and stuff, but when we got up to the top level you could see outside the map, and I couldn't be bothered detailing it because I had very limited time. Like, I was constrained by about 20 days to make this before I couldn't make it any longer, so I had to throw a lot of stuff in. But anyway, right, so what I've done here to ensure the player doesn't rush by is I've put a soft barrier in. These soft barriers can be moved, you can pick it up and whatever, but it's there at the start, so the player's less likely to just push on that way, or yeah, sure, they'll go around that way, but they you'll quickly see that that's a dead end, and then they'll look over here. And to be honest, I think most players would automatically look over here. It's just in case I put some stuff in. And you can basically see the majority of the first area and all the different places that you'll be going. So you can see the bridge, which is one of the themes I picked. You can see the drop down here, which is quite interesting. There's also out of bounds areas which are not used, but just to kind of fill out the area. Most of these puzzles, and I'll call them puzzles. They're not like puzzles in that you have to think about them and work them out and you have to use a lot of your brain power. They're just obstructions, but most of them are taken from Half-Life 2 Episode 2, because the ones there were quite solid, and they kind of make for good gameplay, and that's why the gameplay in this map is really intuitive. It's because they're all stolen, basically. But the thing here is we're just breaking wooden boards. That's all we're doing, but it's giving the player something to do. So, bit of a cliched trope there, you know, the moment you stand on the elevator, it drops you. But in this case, it was just to act as a point of no return. So what you're doing is you're making sure that the player can't get back up there. You know, you're definitively placing the player in an area that they have to keep going forward. And it's interesting, it just makes it a bit more fun, a bit more interesting than just having static level. And that's what I really wanted to do with this level, is have a static, not a non-static, a dynamic level, a changing environment. And I did that very well, as I'll speak about later, and also with that. So, just to show you that there is a Combine presence, I had that guy running over the bridge. Now, I could have shot him there, and he would have attacked, and we could have had a battle. Now, I can't drop down there. I made it so that the player can't drop down, because if they could just get down to the bottom, and that defeats the purpose of the map. You know, I've actually got stuff for the player to do. You know, jumping down there, you know, kills you. I won't demonstrate it. Well, hopefully it does, unless I forgot to put the trigger in. That would be awkward. But hey ho, maybe that's why. I don't know. And the cage makes a sound every couple of seconds. I think it's randomized, if I can remember correctly. And it's to remind you that it's there. It's to remind the player what the aim of this map is. You're freeing these citizens. And I give an audio cue, and then you can see these, this Combine soldier. I'm not sure how many people picked up on this, but you can actually throw a grenade through there, and it will drop down. And I've put, I think, trigger push in there. Maybe I didn't for this one, but I would usually put a trigger push just to make sure it actually gets in. And originally the crate was round here, but I got told to move it here to make it more apparent to the player that it can be used. And this is one of these situations. I set it up so that the player can take it on as they wish. And the player can walk right up to the window and look at them, and they won't notice the player until they either step in here or break the glass. So that it gives the player control on how to, take on the situation. It's one of these things, instead of every battle being the player running into a room and having Combine soldiers facing them, it's a bit different. This is a camera placed looking towards the entrance where we were initially. I do not think it was a good idea to place this here. I think it's very confusing because, it makes it look like it's somewhere that the player needs to go. But I put it there to make the player think, wait, why is there a camera over the entrance? What's going on? Were they watching me the full time? What's going to happen? So it's kind of a error on my part that I wouldn't add again. You see, you heard the metallic sound, so we'll continue going round. I've put some more stuff to find just so that the player's constantly engaging with the level. I put a crowbar here to make the player think again. What's a crowbar doing here? And then obviously a broken fence and a crowbar. Maybe something like that. Maybe there was someone here before. Just to kind of bit of environmental storytelling, although I think a few people got confused. They thought, what's, a crowbar, what? I got told to take it out, I think. But the whole purpose was that people would question it. Now, we'll move on to the surprise explosion and battle, and I'll maybe talk over this. I'll play through it first, and then I'll talk over it. So you see the crates. Most players will want to go for the crates, obviously. There we go. So obviously I put the crates there for kind of to bait the player onto the structure, and then I had the bleeping sounds to kind of scare the player, or kind of, yeah, just to kind of make something unexpected happen. And this is what I was talking about, dynamically changing environments. So having a static level is good, but it's better, you know, the elevator fell back there, this thing was blown up here. It's changing around you, and whilst it may not look, you know, the best, you know, this isn't the prettiest level I've ever made, because it was made very, very quickly, it's still, you know, you get the sense of what everything is. So yes, the Combine have set up this trap, that trap for you. That line was added to remind the player that the citizens are there, because it's very easy for players to kind of forget what they're doing, and that's understandable. With everything else that's going on, it's good just to kind of call back and remind them what the main aim is. So what I've done here is I've created a multi-step puzzle for the player to solve. I quite like it. This is the bridge element that you can see at the start, and that the Combine soldier went over. So we've got, I put a kind of window into that area there, and it's really difficult to see what it is, but you can see that there's something there, so it's probably going to be important. And you've got this red and white striped thing, but first we've got a battle to do. This guy falls through the bridge. That's fine. I could have tried to fix that, but to be honest, it's more fun seeing him fall through, and it's not too much of an issue. But we will go over here, and we get to the other side, which is where the main part of the puzzle is. Now this thing, I don't know what it's supposed to be. It's merely here for gameplay purposes, in that you've got these exploding crates. Or at least that's what's implied. Because I couldn't have barrels that could be moved. I had to find a way of making them stationary, so these crates suffice. And it's true that these crates are never usually exploding crates in Half-Life levels, but if you constrain yourself that way, life becomes even more difficult, and it's better to just add something, and, you know, most people will understand what it is. So yeah, that's been added like that. There is lots of goodies in this room. And I kind of like the way the shotgun soldier was revealed here. It was, you know, just so you can't see him immediately, the thing rolls up and then you get to fight him, and it makes it more surprising and interesting for the player. Right, so now we need to carry one of these things across. Now, it might be the case that the player doesn't realise that initially, and they might go back here. And what happens when they go up here and push that is, you can see I've made it very clear that they can't, you can't progress, and that they need, oh wait, yeah, that's going down here. They need one of these things that will snap into place, and then allow the player to basically do the full thing. So here's some more dynamically changing environment, and I like the sound and the way it falls and the lookout coming from above. It just makes it a lot more intense. Not like intense like an action movie, but you interesting. And now the bridge is down. So we get to use it for a third time, because obviously there's 3 times you're going to use it. Going there, coming back, and then now we're going to slide down it into the, I presume, mess hall for the factory. This concept of having the weapons in a cage that you can't get into was from episode 1, when you're in the, you're kind of in like a underground thing, garage or tunnel, but that was taken from there. A little mini side game. And now we have a battle with the most annoying enemies of them all. But if you get this gun, it's quite fun. And I was sure to limit them because I know how much people don't like them. So only 3 can be alive at the same time, and you know there's 2 more that spawn through these vents, and then after that, that's it, over. So now we're on the floor of the factory, the main floor. We're quite far down. It's good verticality. There isn't that much to see. There's a few items to find here and there, just to kind of make the space a bit more useful for the player. And then we get to the forklift part of it, which helps you get across the other side, because I collapsed the stairs there. And that's one of the things you see when you come out the door, so you can clearly see that whilst there are stairs on that side, there's no stairs on this side. And the guys was probably on the stairs when they broke. I deliberately placed this window here in this encounter so you can see the Combine soldiers running. You hear the sound, you look up, you see them, so you think, oh, there's Combine soldiers on the move. And then you go in here, oh dear, there are grenades. And that's why I placed these boxes here. It was to prevent the player just from running in. The whole grenade thing was borrowed from a map from Chasmville, I think it was. I think it was Crowbar's map. It was like set in a tower or something. So one of the first maps I remember playing that was a Ville competition. But yeah, that was just like a little interesting thing that wasn't gun combat immediately, but you know, the player has to retreat, so I've clipped off the walls here, so say if you were running, you don't get snagged on the side. Oh, well, apparently you do. Sometimes. It's not very accurate, but I'm not sure how many people need it. And now we get on to the second chamber. This was the first fusion element that I picked was 2 rooms, and this would have been the second room, but the fact is, as you saw back there, I had a lot more rooms I needed, mainly for optimization, so I made it, what was the one, I think Bridgeville was, I traded out the 2 rooms and put the bridge puzzle in, just to kind of get around that one. So the thing I like, you know, I quite like this is probably the best from a gameplay standpoint, is that you can, when you walk in the door, you're immediately facing the exit to the area. You can see it up there, and maybe not as clearly marked as it could have been, but you know, still, you know, it's good enough. And your eye is drawn to the red scissor lift, you know, hydraulic scissor lift that you can see over there, and it's clear that you're going to need to use this for getting across to the exit. So immediately you can see what's going on with, you know, the lights and stuff. This room is not very well detailed. It's more functionality over form, but this texture here is quite a lifesaver because it kind of makes it look a bit more interesting. If you build it into the wall, you can make quite interesting structures. So even if you've got a bit of a plain room with mostly plain walls like this and like that, you can still lessen the blow to make it look a little less plain, and you can really get away with plain walls in Half-Life 2 maps, because if you look at, you know, Half-Life 2 from 2004, there wasn't that much detail. It wasn't a really detailed game, if you actually go back and look at it. But it was detailed for the time, certainly. So then, yes, so the purpose of this is, well, I need to get up there and I need to get this thing to extend or expand or whatever you want to call it. And then up here you can see the generator that will be used, that is marked with a red light to show you it is not functional, so you need to find a way to do it. And up here you can see the exit a lot better if you were in doubt before. So we have this handle crank, and then this is my favourite. This was my favourite thing to work on. Just making that scissor lift. It's quite fun. It's the most memorable part of it, because I really wanted to include it, and I managed to get it all working with like the logic and stuff. And now we can get across. And I use stairs a lot here to quickly get the player to the top, because at this point I don't want it to drag on. So now we've got a kind of battle where we can fight, but players tend to run, you know, or run further up as the thing goes up. So I've created kind of places for the player to hide from these turrets and run around and... Yes. And the turrets have been placed so that they'll always kind of be able to see you in some direction. So if you're over here, he can see you. Over there, that one can see you. And then round here, this one can see you. And you kind of have to find new intuitive ways of getting this one out, which is much more harder than it looks. Well, I'm not making it look easy, let's be honest. He's going to fall to the bottom. We will dispose of them. Now, before I move on, I want to show you something quite funny. Well, it's not funny. It was funny for me to do. It's something I like to do with my levels, is I like to include weird and creepy things, and I've included weird things in most of my levels I've done. Like, there was one in Cosmonaut and one in Stalwart XT, but most people don't find them. But when you come down here, you can actually see this door is opened. I wasn't going to show you this because I was going to keep it secret, but I thought, you know, probably no one's found this, so I'm going to show you, and it'll be funny. Now, I'm not sure if that was a very nice thing to do, putting a jump scare in like that. It's not like, you know, scary jump scare, although if someone wasn't expecting it. You know, really like going into a dark corridor that wasn't there before. And that only triggers when you go all the way up there. But that's what I do when I'm bored, is I put these weird things in my levels. And there was one in Cosmonaut that I think some people found. And there's other ones in my other levels. Anyway, that was just a little sidetrack into the mind of Dolmo. I'll talk more about the purpose of, or the initial purpose of this room later on, but for now we've got a bit of a battle with a sniper, so a bit of foreshadowing here that you know, how did this guy die? We don't know. There's nothing around here that could have killed him. But as soon as we walk out here, uh-oh. And if you look up there, that acts as a warning shot. So often I see, or I have seen in levels in the past, people will set the sniper facing the player. The sniper will immediately start firing the player, and the player will, or you as the player will die instantly. But I like to give the player a chance because I'm kind, and it's also good for gameplay design. You want to give the player a chance to think, oh heck, there's a sniper. I need to find somewhere to hide. Arguably, it's not a good thing that the sniper's behind the player. I don't think that's a good thing, and I did try and work out another way of doing this, but I couldn't find it, and I was running out of time, so I kept him there. But you know, I've given the player plenty of ammo, health and suit power, and the box is placed there and makes the player, you know, run that way. It's just like a soft barrier, as I was speaking about. It guides the player because it's pointing this way. It kind of creates a track around here, and it also acts as a bit of cover. And I've made sure to make it kind of obvious, you know, for the player where they can go by using lights. Oh. And the barrel's placed just so players don't run there instantly. But it's quite easy to kind of do that without getting hit. And obviously I've got grenades. It's actually really easy to get him now, but I'm going to play it as if I didn't have any, just to show you what it's like. This bit's a bit precarious because it's really quite difficult to jump up there. I think you get snagged on this thing, which this is a mistake. It's not supposed to be poking out like that, but that's life. And sometimes this guy actually breaks it for you, which is, I don't know why, but he does. So that's quite good, but he's not supposed to. You're supposed to stand there and try and break it. But I've given the player a good amount of cover all the way up. It's actually easy to get snagged on that bit. I should have probably made it better, but you know, this room is like a construction site if you hadn't caught on to that. So this is like a half-built room. Just in case the player never managed to, you know, get him in time, then there's a endless supply of grenades here. My main idea for this room was that instead of combine and turrets being on this elevator, there would be a strider, you know, one of these big combine striders, and it would follow you up, and you would have to then drop this thing on it by coming up here and pulling a lever. But trying to get that working was really difficult, especially with the space. The close quarters of it, running around here with a strider shooting you, was not fun. And even trying to get him to ride the elevator was super difficult. I added sounds on this thing when you stand in it to kind of make the player feel worried, but not really, like, you know, it's not like it's a physics thing, it's just a normal brush thing. This is an example of a non-static environment. But it's just an interesting way of getting across to the other side. You can see the exit is right next to where the sniper was, so there's no way you can miss it. And you've got to do a bit of a precarious jump there. And just as one final way, you know, puzzle, I made it so that this thing was barricaded up and you have to work your way around it. I put the red paint around the windows to draw the player's attention to them. This is something I learned from Lost Industry 2 and Lost Industry 2's lead developer Paradise, who I think we made a video in 2020 where you know, we went through Lost Industry 2, and that's kind of what I learned, is that, you know, to help draw your attention, and right enough it makes it more visually interesting, and it shows that it's a way that you can go, and, you know, the bricks obviously balance the wooden plank. And the white paint behind here was to, you know, make the health and suit chargers stand out, and especially with this light. So now we're back into the main chamber. We'll just get rid of them. You hear the over here to draw your attention down to them, because by this point you've definitely forgotten, you know, the player's definitely forgotten what the aim of the map is, because they've been away from it. And I wanted to call back to the fact that this is what you were doing, but I couldn't do that. So obviously other people playing it's much quicker than me, because I'm talking over it now. And having them break through is just kind of a callback to that part of Half-Life 2 that I spoke about in the warehouse that looked like this. The soft barrier here to ensure that the player doesn't immediately go that way. I'm not sure it always works, but most of the time, you know, the player's going that way, they come out here, they see the Combine Elite, and then you know, you can hide down here. This was a late addition to the level. And then you can push the button and see them being risen out, and then the paint has been put there to help with vision, so you can see the ladder, so you know that you've got to climb up. And I tried my best not to include any ladders whatsoever. I think this is one of the only ones. But it's with my philosophy of no vents and no ladders. Because ladders are just fiddly in these maps, so there definitely is a ladder here, but there's no vents, which is good. And you can see like the whole map. Now, the ending of this level, you know, you can see the way out there, and you can see the cog, and obviously you're going to go in here because they're too rude to take it out, and then for some reason this guy's here locking you in. And I saw someone say, oh, couldn't you just not shoot them from the cage? It's like, yeah, but you can't shoot them though. You can't. Look, I'm shooting them and they're not dying. And, you know, it's like this whole map was just one big metaphor. Which is, yeah, it's just, you know, the name of the map. It's the purpose of the map. And there you see someone else coming to get you out, and it's a never-ending cycle. So that was my map metaphor, which was for Fusionville 2. It had a lot of solid gameplay in it, a lot of borrowed elements from the Half-Life games, which is, you know, why the gameplay was so solid. Yeah, there was a lot of things I could also change about it, but overall, for a map that was made in 20 days, I think it was quite a good one. And even though I'm not particularly happy about all of it, I'm still happy to know that I made it, and I eventually entered another Ville competition and also a Map Labs competition as well. So that was really good.